things work.
We need a vision for an economy that focuses on what we need nationally. Again, short-term and long-term, not just looking in the rearview mirror. And that kind of vision wants to invest in Canada. I like, a Buy Canada policy makes sense. Even our Defense Department now is contracting out to get cheaper products from China when better quality products for our military are found right here in Canada. What we're seeing right now under your policies, Mr. Harper, is the most profound structural shift in our economy in more than a generation. And it's dangerous because it's unbalanced. And that's what the rest of the world sees. I don't know why you don't see it.
We need to have a plan right now for the difficulties in which we are in the middle and long term. It's what we have, with very strong fiscal discipline to avoid deficit, with investments in R&D, and we will boost the credit on R&D, and it will be refundable in the Liberal plan. We need to help the companies to buy machinery and equipment that will save energy costs for them. We need to invest much more in infrastructure. We need to have a $1 billion investment to attract the investments around the world in our manufacturing sector. There are a lot of things we need to do, and always we need to help our industry to be more energy efficient, to be more profitable.
Mr. Harper.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, in terms of Coast Guard, shipping vessels, military procurement, we have either a Buy in Canada policy or an industrial regional benefit policy that ensures benefits in this country. So let's be clear. That is, in fact, the policy.
Now, Jack, let him finish, please. Let him finish, please.
You mentioned some people who've lost some jobs. It's a terrible thing when a family loses jobs. It creates terrible uncertainty. I've been between jobs. I understand that. But what we have to do as leaders is make sure we have a plan to create jobs. And I have to tell you that, I believe all you guys are sincere about what you're saying. But the policies of simply ramping up our spending, increasing our taxes, and possibly going into deficit,
we're not proposing
things
that.
investments in action. You say you've got a plan. Where is it? Where's your platform? Under the sweater? You haven't presented one in this election. I find that shocking. I can't remember in history when
Mr. Harper?
I believe there's every reason we can stay in surplus. That's what we've planned for. I think all the indications, we continue to be on track fiscally. I think we'll stay on track.
Okay, Ms. May?
You have to say you have every intention of not reaching a deficit. No one could make that promise. But I have to know, Mr. Harper, how it is that your Minister of Public Works, Mr. Paradis, could say that he's canceling all the contracts to build those ships for the Coast Guard and the Navy and looking at buying them over...
A deficit. The NDP would not bring in a deficit?
No, we would not. And in fact, the previous government, of course, loaded it onto the provinces and the municipalities, which I know well because I spent time there. No. And the NDP has the best record in power, according to the Department of Finance, of balancing budgets when we're in power, and that doesn't include Tommy Douglas's 17 balanced budget in a row. Of course, Mr. Ray is now with you, Mr. Dion.
Gilles Duceppe.
We were the only party to propose the anti-deficit law. In other words, was beaten by the older parties. But I'll tell you something, there's a margin of maneuver, and it's very clear in our platform, and we were always accurate on the amount of deficit or surpluses in Ottawa. In fact, the only party to really come to the target when the announcements were made after.
How do you reconcile the advancement of environmental protection legislation with Canadians' desire to have a growing, sustainable, and stable economy that features less taxation for the already overburdened taxpayer?
Is the cost of fossil fuels, that means oil and gas. It will continue to grow, and the cost will be environmental and economic. The country that will have energy efficiency, that will be able to produce more in using less fossil fuels, will be the more competitive of the world. Your income, your savings, your investments, the profits of the companies, and to shift it to pollution, and to invest in everything, machinery and equipment, all the solutions, technologies that will make our country cleaner, more energy efficient, and more profitable for the workers and their families.
If I can just be clear about the Liberal plan, the carbon taxes proposed in the Liberal plan, you can look at it's page 78 in French, I'm not sure the English, has carbon tax increases double the size of any tax reductions. That's the reality, a tax increase. Look, there's no way, you've got to be honest with the people that some of the environmental things we're going to do are going to impose some costs on the economy. So we have to figure a way that we can balance that, and that's what we're trying to do. We have a greenhouse gas reduction plan that foresees a 20% cut of greenhouse gas emissions from now to 2020. That's less than some of the other parties are proposing, but that's because we're trying to balance economic growth with environmental investment. We're also investing in environmental enforcement. We have to make sure that our economy and our environment are in balance.
Thank you, Mr.
Because what we should be doing is making those big polluters pay with the proposal we've put forward, with strict limits on emissions, and use every penny of those revenues to then stimulate the new industrial sector, the new energy economy, renewable energy, public transportation, green cars, energy efficiency. That's the way forward, and it creates a lot of jobs.
It's a very important question, and the answer is to apply Kyoto. Applying Kyoto means choosing 1990 as the year of reference, first. Secondly, to have absolute target, not intensity target like Harper's proposing. Third, to have a real carbon market exchange. And fourth, to have the territorial approach, which means each province will apply its own plan. And I'm very happy that both the Liberal and the NDP supported the territorial approach. For Quebec, it means profit, because we reduced by 1.2% our green gases emissions from 1990 to 2006. During the same time, Alberta raised its own emissions by 36.6% and Saskatchewan by 63%. So those who pollute have to pay.
Thank you, so when we shift and tax those things that we don't want, like pollution, and don't tax the things we want, like income and jobs, we can move in the direction of Sweden, which has actually seen its economy grow while reducing its greenhouse gases.
I encourage viewers to look at the actual table in the Liberal plan, which makes clear that the tax increases are twice the size of the tax reductions. That's why the package would be a tax increase.
It's a lie.
You have $40 billion in carbon taxes and $26 billion in cuts, and you have $12 billion where you don't even have a source of revenue for your spending.
No. It's not true at all. For every dollar that we will raise, you will have a tax cut, and these tax cuts will be on your income. For a family earning $60,000, it's $1,300 of tax cut. For a family in poverty earning only $20,000 with 2 kids, you will have $2,400 back in your pocket, thanks to the green shift. Countries that have done that, contrary to what Mr. Harper wants you to believe, they outperform the countries that did not do it according to the growth of their economy. And at the same time, they take care of the climate change crisis, and they think about their children.
The only way that a carbon tax shift works, the way applied in Sweden, the way applied in Germany, the way we propose it in the Green Party, is that you reduce the taxes on the things you want in society, jobs and income, and put them onto pollution. Now, we've got a plan that would bring in $35 billion. I know that Mr. Dion's plan is only bringing in $15. So he can reduce taxes $15 billion. We can reduce them $35 billion. It's simply bad economics to pretend that dumping pollution in the atmosphere doesn't have a cost. It does. And your plan based on intensity targets was this very day, the Alberta Auditor General Fred Dunn found that the Alberta plan based on intensity targets is simply not worth the money they're spending on it because it will not reduce greenhouse gases, and neither will yours.
I'll ask you a very important question for Quebec to Mr. Harper. I was talking about the territorial approach. I know that the NDP and the Liberals supported the territorial approach. I don't know if the Green Party is supporting also the territorial approach.
You want to explain to our viewers?
Territorial approach, it means each province will have its own plan based on the efforts they made between 1990 and 2006.
Okay.
So it means that Quebec, since Quebec reduced its own emissions by 1.2%, compared to 36.6% for Alberta or 63% for Saskatchewan, obviously it means profits for Quebec. So I'm asking Mr. Harper, since the 2 other parties, I don't know, Mme. May, if you supported that, if you're supporting that, but I want to hear Mr. Harper, is he supporting that? Because for Quebec, it means profits. It means a lot of money. It means investment in Quebec. It means a sustainable development economy for Quebec.
Let's get an answer, then we'll go to Mr. Lay. Very, very simply, if I can just spend a moment on our plan, which is not to impose taxes on people. It is to make companies pay into a technology fund if they don't meet targets. In terms of provinces, we've been very clear. Every province can have its own implementation plan, provided the targets are at least as strong or stronger than the national targets. You can't have a target that's less than the national target.
Not at all. I'm talking about the European approach. Yeah. The European Union had absolute targets for the whole Europe, and then they gave each country a target based on what the efforts they made in the past, recognizing the efforts. So those who made the efforts have to receive the benefits. It's quite different.
The efforts made in the past are part of the factors that are considered in the development.
Intensity-based targets, a nice neutral-sounding phrase. You know what it really means? It means that we can, companies like Exxon, who you gave a permit to in a matter of 1 week for a huge development in the tar sands, even though the environmental and health issues weren't dealt with, they can increase by multiple factors the number of barrels that they produce from those tar sands, And if as long as they reduce the emissions per barrel a little bit, you're happy. Well, I'll tell you, Canadians aren't happy, next generations aren't happy, and you're throwing away the opportunity to force these companies to pay up for their pollution and create jobs in the new energy economy.
Okay, we go one